So we're back with Jim Reeder, and we are going to continue our conversation from before, talking about the history of Reeder pianos and how we got to where we are today. So just a little recap. Before we got to this building in Lansing, we were in Grand Ledge, and my father had opened a shop on his father's property where there was a sawmill, and had begun selling new Mason and Hamlins and pianos that he had reconditioned and restored out of that shop. But it was so far in the country, people were coming, but it was a little bit more difficult to get to. So he bought a church in the city of Grand Ledge, and beside the church was a parsonage, and that happens to be where I was born and where I started my first few years of life, in the parsonage beside that church. And eventually he built a building in the back which housed the Restoration Center. So that's where we left off.
It is. Okay.
And at that church, I can remember the sanctuary had wooden floors and big tall ceilings, peaked ceilings, and that was the main showroom with all the grand pianos.
And it had a balcony.
It had a balcony, and in the balcony was a music teacher.
Yeah.
My first music teacher. My first piano lessons were with Miss Veda.
What was her last name?
O'Donnell.
O'Donnell, yeah.
And I was about 5 years old when I started that up in the balcony. And
I didn't realize that we'd been there almost 5 years because you were actually a babe when we moved.
yes, I was just born in that place. But you eventually turned that parsonage into more showroom space. At one point, there was organs,
Mm-hmm.
there were pianos, and most of the uprights were in that renovated area on the parsonage side. So there was a lot of instruments in there.
Well, how many brands did we have?
I know you had Steinway and Sons at that some point.
Yes, we had Kauai.
And you had Kauai.
And
You had Everett,
and Mason and Hamlin.
Mason and Hamlin,
And their offshoot names.
and Baldwin. I think you had Baldwin.
No, I didn't have Baldwin.
Oh, okay.
That was still going in Lansing.
Oh, okay. So
Baldwin came when I came here.
that was after the fact.
Yeah.
So, and then you had your restored pianos.
That was the biggest part of it that was growing. After we moved from the old sawmill and built our center behind our showroom on 602 South Clinton Street.
602 South Clinton, yes.
But it was turned out to be very short-lived there because we outgrew that shop.
I do remember the shop being very crowded.
And the whole industry was so new as far as restoring quality pianos. We had good lines of pianos and ended up with a Steinway franchise at that location.
Yes, that would have been the 80s.
Yes, that was the last few years of ownership by the family of Steinway.
So you knew the people,
I knew Mr. Steinway. I
Mr.
knew
Steinway,
John Steinway in particular.
and you were visiting the factory at that point.
I took 2 trucks down to get loads of Steinways many times.
Many times we got lots of Steinways there. So
Yeah.
that was
Steinways had just gone up from $1,000 per foot to probably $2,000 a foot, which was still a real bargain.
$2,000 a foot.
Yeah, for 9 foot was 9,000, and then it became 18,000.
18,000 for a
And
9
then
foot
who
concert
knows
grand.
how much it went up. It was still a bargain because everybody else's pianos was going up sky high at that time.
So were there any imported pianos at that time?
Kauai.
So Kauai was the one that was coming in.
There were
from-
2 Kauai, 2 Japanese, the Yamaha and Kauai's, and we were neck and neck in sales.
But you sold the Kauai piano. Yeah. Okay. Someone else had the Yamaha franchise.
Yes. One of
A
the main
dealership,
stores.
I guess.
Main store. At one time in Lansing, when I started, there were 4 dealers that sold pianos. I was the 5th one, but I was just outside of Lansing. And by the next 10 years, there were 2 dealers, and now there's only 1.
Guess who that is?
Yes, guess who that is?
Well, I would imagine that the Restoration Center had something to do with that.
Well, the Restoration Center, of course, at that point in history, we began branching out. That's where we became interested in many sales. We had low-end sales. We had these cheap American-made spinners. We sold for $500 or $600, but didn't last long because the economy got so much increase of desire, and the cost of materials went up so much that everything went to offshore for low-end pianos.
At that time, I remember doing a lot of cross-country trips. You were doing restorations across the United States. It was beginning to open up, not just Michigan. Is that right?
Well, that was the situation. Is that I gave several times classes at the PTG organization, Piano Technicians Guild conventions. We did that maybe 10 times or so. What happened is that when I would take a Steinway there, the eyes opened up, yeah, we're something. And so it gave us a notoriety of quality of restoration.
Well, were there many people doing it at that point?
It's mostly a tuners organization. And at that point, I began writing a few articles for the journal, about restoring pianos and such. That was the beginning of their big conventions that they have nowadays with all these rebuilders, whatever.
So
But
at that point,
I was in on that as far as the development with PTG.
So at that point, there was not a lot of rebuilders. It was mostly tuners, and you were kind of teaching the rebuilders like a step further.
Well, there was a lot of counteraction when we went into rebuilding because the old timers and technicians, no, it was a closed industry, and only new pianos companies could make a piano. And we proved the point that we could take a quality old piano and make it better, as good as or better than a new piano, especially at this era.
So you were part of the education process. They didn't realize that you could actually restore a piano at that point until they saw what your end product
There was a
was.
counteraction. We were in the counteraction because it should not be done.
Oh, okay, so they were saying it shouldn't even be done.
No, it's a holy industry, quotation marks.
So you shouldn't touch it.
No, only the original manufacturer. I don't know what they expected because you have these thousands and thousands of old pianos that nobody wanted anymore, but they were good pianos if you restored them. And then, of course, what really happened is that most of the manufacturers went out of business because there were no more sales, et cetera, and the cost of labor increased so dramatically at that time that the manufacturer couldn't keep up with it. And that's when the companies from offshore companies became very visible and very necessary. Otherwise, there would be no pianos made.
So that was coming into the 90s. That was like going from the
Yes.
80s into the 90s
80s,
where
90s,
that
and beyond.
change happened.
Yeah.
So at that point, I would imagine that the demand for the restored instrument went up too.
Well, that's when Yamaha and Kawai became very well known in the USA. I mean, we were the biggest country that was taking their productions. And I was one. I had Kawai dealers, and we sold many Kawai pianos.
Yeah.
Because the cost was so, at that point, was so small because their labor costs our labor costs began to explode and to become too much. And so all of our low-end or mid-priced piano companies that were existing when I started no longer existed.
Yeah.
They couldn't afford it.
They couldn't afford it. They shut down.
Because the industry from the offshore was so cheap.
Yeah. So now there's two companies that still operate in the United States that make pianos. There's Steinway and Sons, and there's Mason and Hamlin. That's it.
I suppose there probably is. I'm racking my brain. I can't think.
I don't think there's any other ones except for those two.
Yeah.
But
But what really has happened is that the restoration, piano restoration, we get the hulks of pianos that aren't any good anymore, and we remake them, and that way we can take the place of a low price piano.
yeah.
and have a high-end instrument.
It's the same or better than what the high-end instruments that are being produced today are.
Yes.
So the quality of work that we're doing produces a very high-end instrument at a much lower cost.
I hate to say that we rival what the high-end companies do now. In our situation here, our restored instruments are, and we are told that they're far better than a new piano of the same brand. And because something about having the old high-end piano, performance piano, restored is better than having new high-end price piano.
I think that there's been a lot of people that have come out and appreciated the work that you
Well,
do.
it's proved fact because there are other concerns and technicians and companies that do the same thing we do. And of course, we were actually on basically the beginning of the restoring of the total restoring of the piano.
Yeah.
I think there wasn't any choice.
Yeah. So would you say that you started replacing soundboards in the 70s?
Oh yes, I bought soundboards from Shimo. I was a Shimo dealer, and they were happy to sell the board. Yeah, you should do that.
Okay.
I mean, the offshore people encouraged us.
So the Schimmel is a German company, and so you were bringing in soundboards from Germany.
I was selling their pianos.
You were selling their pianos, but bringing in their soundboards
Oh yeah, they
to
sent me a
replace.
ship 10 or 15 boards, and that's where we got our first boards.
Okay, I didn't know that. So you got the board, the blank, and then you put the ribs on?
Yes, my dad was a pretty good woodworker, and he knew how to match the wood to the best optimum.
So he had that
So
expertise.
He had that expertise.
Yeah, he knew
Quarter
exactly
is
what to do.
vertical grade, you see.
Well, and I would imagine you had the equipment.
Well, we didn't have the equipment, but I had the man who knew how to make it with the equipment we had.
Also, that's true. He made a lot of the
At
jigs and the
yeah.
fixtures we have back there.
Yeah.
So you're talking about maple. Now maple is used for the bridges. How did you learn how to do the bridge work?
Well, there was no choice. Nobody told me how. You had to just be a good woodworker. And that's the skills that we developed. The first bridges were not so precisely notched, obviously. But it didn't take us long because you take an old Steinway and look at how wonderfully well it was done, and you duplicate that.
And you're duplicating what the
And
original was.
we learned how to sharpen our tools, so it was a very simple operation. If you don't have the right tools and they're not sharp, you can have not a very nice, pretty job done.
So you've got the soundboard, you were able to put the ribs on. Now, the ribs are a little bit more tricky because you're cutting the crown into that. Who developed that system?
Well, I did it. We did that. We realized that, well, first of all, my dad, he understood grain and he understood quarter saw, and so he's the one that really said, well, vertical grain has got to be cut a certain way. And you have to buy the raw material big enough so you can have it quarter sawn, because that's what you need for a bridge, quarter sawn material.
How did you figure out how to crown the rib?
It was a logical thing because you have to have a diaphragm and it can't have one side lopsided. It has to work as a whole. And we realized that. And
So nobody
it's
taught
common
you.
sense
Nobody
for us.
taught you.
My dad was a woodworker.
So
and
he
a man.
figured it out.
Well, he helped us, but he helped us do this. And obviously our first ones were very pretty, but they worked.
But you that's the best way to learn is by just getting your hands dirty
Well,
and
nobody-
getting in there.
The industry, the rebuilding people said, that's a no-no, you should not do that. And I was sending my work out to somebody over in the eastern part of the U.S. No, you don't do it, you let us do it. They made a few pianos, and they also were a piano supply house for technicians, parts for actions and stuff like that.
So as far as
And
putting
they rebuilt the pianos. You send them to us. And
well, they didn't want your competition. So let's talk about the bellywork department still. There's a table back there called the Go Bar table, and that's where the ribs are glued on. And I understand that you made that table.
well, in my experience with Steinway, as a Steinway dealer, watching how they did their ribs and glued them on, They were pretty old-fashioned at that time. And then also looking at how much crown was needed, didn't take too long to figure that out, how to make the gold bar table. And of course, you know, the bridges, how it's not straight across, it goes from the treble end down to the base end. So you had to make a space. How much crown would you need?
Well, the ribs, you mean?
Yeah, for crowning the ribs, but so we had to make a gold bar deck that was help us build that crown into the soundboard when we glued the ribs on.
So it's kind of concave a little bit?
Well, yes, it's not just
flat.
kind of, it's very precisely concave.
Yeah.
And I figured it out, and I had no pre ideas. I just studied it along with my dad, but I built it, and I built it such a way that could not collapse. And when they moved it, they had a hard time moving it because it's very heavy. And they had to reinforce the upper part because you had to have gold bars that, and your gold bar sticks would have to.
The tension has to hold the tension.
It's all you press it down with gold bars.
Yeah.
And I made the crown and the marks of crown where I thought should be, following the bridge and the location, and it suffices for every size piano. And of course, the Consagrande, you had to do it in 2 steps.
Right, but it's been there a long time, and it's lasted all these years.
It can't go away because it's solid from the deck to the floor.
It's solid.
It's not solid this
We'll have
way,
to show
but
a picture of it.
like ribs.
Yeah, yeah.
When I cut off to make the deck, I cut the scallop into the floor you can't go any lower than the floor.
Right.
So I cut that crown in there, so it cannot move. And it's layered by plywood on top. And I use the same gold bar deck to glue those all together. The top is about 1 inch thick.
Yeah.
Of lamination.
So,
and I laminated it one board at a time, one thickness at a time.
So talking about the crown and making it precisely so that there's the bridges or the ribs are rounded and there's that crown built in. Why is the crown so important?
Well, all instruments have to have a crown. You have pressure of the strings, and it has to be counteracted, like a violin or any other string instrument. You have the same situation. And so on a piano, it's just considerably larger. Pressure is, you have quite a bit of down pressure. We had to have enough down pressure to make sure that the rib is glued securely.
Right. So the soundboard, it's only
we
glued
didn't
in.
have any help. We didn't know what we were doing. But this is what I decided. Well, if we're going to do this, I'm going to need to have maybe, when I put a straight edge at the high end point, I need maybe close to 1/2 inch of belly to make the amount of crown I wanted when the piano was put together.
When you install it in the piano.
Yeah. And so you don't want to go overboard because otherwise it's a reverse effect.
Right. So it's because it's only glued around the edges, it has to have a roundedness to it, so when the strings come down, they press down a little bit, but not so much that it's going to go negative or flat or beyond flat.
No, I say if you have the 1/2 inch crown, and when it's all up to pitch, then you need 1/4 inch.
So then by that pressing down is going to take it just enough.
That's just to give you an example.
Yes. So that down bearing is measurable along the bridges,
Yep,
which is why you had to do it
We know what we want.
for that.
And we don't tell people about what we want because everybody has their own ideas.
well, but when you hear the piano played, you can tell it's done right.
Yep. The crown has to be equalized with the string tension.
Right. So that's quite an area of expertise to have to learn on your own.
Well, when you take a piano apart, you can actually see what the manufacturer has done.
Yeah.
But you must use a quality manufacturer.
Yeah. So that was done in Grand Ledge, and you developed all these techniques in Grand Ledge. When did we move into this building here in Lansing?
We were on the main street route, and somebody wanted to build some stores there, and so they would.
It was McDonald's. They wanted a parking lot.
Yeah, but they didn't stay there. They moved to the other side on a different route. But they bought us out, and that brought us here. But it wasn't enough money. But we had a kind gentleman who said, "Yeah, you're a young guy. We'll help you out."
So you were able to buy this property and build this building.
Built a building.
Yeah. Well, this is quite a bit larger than
Well,
that
but
building
you realize that the time we built this, the cost was significantly less.
Yes. Well, and it was kind of in the middle of nowhere at this point. Now it's built up, but before it was in the
It's
country.
main road, so it's easy for directions. That's
Yeah.
why I'm here.
Well, and it's the freeways are close by, but the shop is, I would say, probably 4 times as big as the shop was over there.
Well, probably 10 times as big.
Well, I don't. Maybe 6
15.
times.
My little shop was
Maybe the size of the showroom, if that.
yes, that's about not even that.
Maybe
About
that.
half of
Maybe
that.
not that much. Well, but from the so you went from church building temporarily to the sawmill again
Yeah,
for just a little bit of time, and then while this was being built, and then you moved in here. Do you remember how many employees you had back then?
Well, I started out with 1, and then I had 3 or 4. See, when you have a finish department, you can't have the same people do finish work as you do the technical work.
Right.
And that was something I already knew because I worked in the piano shop when I was in college. And the people in the
So
finish shop didn't want anything to do with the mechanical stuff.
You had at least 4 people in that shop, maybe 5,
You know, well, I had more than that.
and then your movers on top of it.
Well, I was the mover, so my dad and I did an awful lot of moving.
Yeah. You had some high school or college kids to help you once in a while.
Well, that was in college. Yeah, I went to college. When I went to college, a couple of those guys came back. In fact, I have one person who started with me after in Grand Ledge, and he was a teenager. A late teenager. He was taking the finish off pianos, and he's the only one that's been with me almost from the start.
He's our lead action technician today.
He is that,
And we just had a Finnish guy retire last year who was with you from about the very beginning.
yes,
Same age.
That was 2 people, and they stayed with me as from that time from the old building to the new building.
Well, we've gotten to where we are today, so let's take a break, and then we'll talk about the next time. Maybe we'll talk about Blutner USA. We can talk about more Finnish techniques,
Well, there's
maybe.
a time between them that it's quite interesting. We might want to explore that.
So we'll sit down at some time in the future and discuss how we got to where we are today.